Self-sabotage is one of the strangest and most painful behaviors a person can experience because it often happens quietly, inviciously, and with a sense of familiarity that makes it feel almost natural. You move towards something you want, something you've dreamed about, something you've convinced yourself you're finally strong enough to handle. And just when you begin making progress, something inside you pulls the emergency brake. You procrastinate. You douse yourself. You avoid the next step. You convince yourself you're not ready. You start imagining everything that could go wrong rather than everything that could go right. And slowly, without even realizing it, you return to the exact place you were trying to escape. The mind tells you this is just how you are. But that's not true. Self-sabotage is not a personality trait. It's a psychological pattern built from years of experiences, fears, beliefs, emotional conditioning, and survival mechanisms that once protected you, but now limit you. People sabotage themselves not because they are weak or lazy, but because their brain is more loyal to what feels familiar than to what feels good. The human mind is built to recognize patterns, and once a pattern is repeated enough times, it becomes a kind of emotional home. Even if that home is full of doubt, chaos, insecurity, or disappointment, it still feels safer than the unknown. Progress is unfamiliar. Success is unfamiliar. Healthy relationships are unfamiliar. Being treated with respect is unfamiliar. So the brain falls back into familiar emotional spaces, even when those spaces hurt. This is why someone can desperately want love but push away the people who offer it. Why someone can crave success but avoid taking the steps that lead to it. Why someone can want to change their life but cling to the very habits that keep them stuck. The mind chooses the familiar because the familiar feels survivable, and survival is always more important to the brain than happiness. Self-sabotage often begins in childhood, long before a person has the ability to understand what's happening. Children learn about themselves not through logic, but through emotional experiences. If you grew up in an environment where love was inconsistent, you might have learned that unpredictability is normal. If you were praised only for being perfect, you might have learned that mistakes are dangerous. If you were criticized often, you might have learned to expect failure. If affection was rare, you might have learned to distrust it. And because the mind builds its identity around these early emotional experiences, you carry them into adulthood without noticing. You think you're choosing your relationships, your reactions, your habits, your goals, but often you're choosing familiarity. You're choosing what your mind believes is safe, even if it hurts. The problem is that the subconscious mind does not update itself like the conscious mind does. You can tell yourself you want a better life, but if your subconscious learned that safety comes from staying small, staying quiet, staying unnoticed, or staying in chaos, it will fight every attempt you make to grow. It will create resistance in the form of anxiety, procrastination, distraction, overthinking, perfectionism, and emotional withdrawal. These behaviors are not random. They are the subconscious mind's way of protecting you from perceived threats. To your subconscious, success might feel like a threat. Confidence might feel like a threat. Love might feel like a threat. Standing out might feel like a threat. You're not sabotaging yourself because you don't want better. You're sabotaging yourself because a part of you believes better is dangerous. One of the most fascinating aspects of self-sabotage is that it's rarely dramatic. It doesn't come with alarms or warnings. It often appears in small, subtle actions that are easy to justify. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. You tell yourself it's not the right time. You tell yourself you're too tired, too busy, too overwhelmed. You tell yourself you'll be more disciplined next week. You tell yourself other people are more capable. You tell yourself it doesn't matter if you skip just once. And these excuses feel rational because the mind knows how to protect its patterns with convincing logic. Many people call this laziness, but laziness is almost never the real problem. The real problem is fear. Fear of change, fear of responsibility, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of being seen, fear of losing control, fear of repeating old wounds, fear that if you actually try your hardest and you still fail, then you will have no excuse left to shield yourself. So your mind creates distance between you and the risk. Another common form of self-sabotage is perfectionism. It sounds like a positive trait, but perfectionism is often a shield-on excuse to avoid showing up before you feel ready. You delay taking action because the conditions aren't perfect. The timing isn't perfect. The preparation isn't perfect. Or your confidence isn't perfect. You convince yourself you will start when everything aligns, but nothing ever does. Perfection becomes a comfortable hiding place where you never have to face your fears. For many people, perfectionism is a learned survival strategy. If you grew up in an environment where mistakes brought punishment, shame, or rejection, then perfection becomes a way to avoid emotional pain. Your brain learned that mistakes equal danger. So in adulthood, you avoid taking risks that might expose you to potential failure. The tragic irony is that perfectionism doesn't lead to success. It prevents it. Relationships are another place where self-sabotage shows up in painfully predictable ways. Someone who grew up with inconsistent affection may unconsciously sabotage stable, healthy relationships because their nervous system is more comfortable with unpredictability. Someone who learned that love comes with criticism may gravitate toward partners who repeat the same emotional patterns. Someone who fears abandonment may cling too tightly or push people away to avoid being hurt first. Someone who believes they're not worthy of love may test others, withdraw emotionally, or create conflict to confirm their internal belief. None of this is deliberate. It's the subconscious recreating familiar emotional environments, even when those environments are harmful. You sabotage relationships, not because you don't want love, but because love threatens the emotional pattern you've learned to survive with. Another powerful reason people sabotage themselves is a distorted sense of identity. If you have spent years believing you're the type of person who struggles, who fails, who is overlooked, who is not capable of success, then achieving something good can feel uncomfortable. You begin to feel like an imposter in your own life. You doubt your abilities. You wait for things to fall apart. You feel like you don't deserve the good that is happening. And when the discomfort becomes too strong, the subconscious mind pushes you back into the version of yourself that feels familiar. This is called identity conflict, and it is one of the strongest forces behind you cannot consistently act in a way that contradicts your deepest beliefs about yourself. So, if you want to change your behavior, you must change your identity. Self-sabotage is also connected to the fear of losing control. When you enter new territory, whether it's a new relationship, a new job, a new habit, or a new goal, you expose yourself to unknown outcomes. The brain hates the unknown because it cannot predict it. Predictability feels safe. Even predictable disappointment feels safer than unpredictable success. So people sabotage progress just to stay in environments they know how to navigate. This is why someone might leave a healthy relationship because it is too good to be true, or quit a project just before it succeeds. In their mind, they're regaining control by returning to a familiar emotional state. Another hidden layer of self-sabotage comes from something psychologists call emotional forecasting, which is the brain's attempt to predict how a future event will make you feel. The problem is that the human mind is notoriously bad at predicting emotions accurately. You imagine success will overwhelm you, so you avoid taking steps that might lead to it. You imagine failure will destroy you, so you convince yourself not to try. You imagine discomfort will be unbearable, so you stick to what you know. Emotional forecasting is one of the mind's most powerful illusions because it convinces you that you are protecting yourself when you are actually holding yourself back. Most people don't realize that the anticipation of discomfort is almost always worse than the discomfort itself. But self-sabotage thrives in this illusion, feeding off imagined emotions that never truly come to pass. Self-sabotage also emerges from stored emotional memories, especially those you never fully processed. When people grow up in environments where their feelings were ignored, dismissed, or mocked, they learn to suppress emotions rather than understand them. As adults, these suppressed emotions surface through behavior rather than awareness. Instead of saying, "I'm afraid of failing," the mind expresses fear through procrastination. Instead of saying, "I feel unworthy of success," the mind creates distraction and doubt. Instead of saying, "I don't know how to handle happiness," the mind sabotages relationships, opportunities, and achievements. The subconscious doesn't use words, it uses patterns. So, unprocessed emotions continue to shape behavior long after the conscious mind forgets the original source. People also sabotage themselves because of something known as secondary gain, which refers to the hidden benefits that come from staying the same. For example, if you procrastinate, you avoid the risk of failure. If you keep choosing the wrong relationships, you avoid the vulnerability of trusting someone. If you stay overwhelmed, you avoid expectations from others. If you remain stuck, you avoid responsibility. These benefits are not healthy, but they are comforting to the mind because they provide emotional protection. Over time, these hidden benefits become part of your identity, and letting them go feels like losing a piece of yourself. This is why change feels hard even when you desperately want it. You are not just fighting habitsu, or fighting the internal rewards those habits once gave you. Self-sabotage can also originate from the fear of being judged. Many people, consciously or unconsciously, limit their success because they fear how others will react. They fear criticism, jealousy, expectations, or the pressure of being watched. They fear that standing out will bring them more attention than they can handle. So instead of rising, they shrink. Instead of showing their abilities, they hide them. Instead of being seen, they stay invisible. The desire to stay unnoticed is deeply rooted in human evolution because belonging to a group once meant survival. Today, being visible can feel like a threat to emotional safety, triggering the subconscious to sabotage anything that might draw too much attention. Another driving force behind self-sabotage is unresolved shame. Shame is one of the most powerful and destructive emotions a human can experience because it targets identity rather than behavior. Guilt says, "I did something wrong." Shame says, "There is something wrong with me." When someone carries shame, even unknowingly, their mind resists anything that contradicts their negative self-image. Achievements feel undeserved, compliments feel uncomfortable, opportunities feel overwhelming. Success feels like a spotlight on a flaw they believe they have. So the mind sabotages attempts to rise, not out of laziness, but out of the belief that rising will expose them. People also sabotage themselves when they feel disconnected from their future self. This psychological concept is known as future self-distancing, where the mind struggles to emotionally relate to the person you will become in a year, 5 years, or 10 years. When your future self feels like a stranger, you lack motivation to make choices that would benefit them. You prioritize comfort today instead of progress tomorrow. You avoid short-term discomfort, even though it protects long-term success. You repeat old patterns because the person you will become doesn't feel real to you. The stronger the distance between your current self and future self, the the stronger the pull of self-sabotage. Another critical aspect of self-sabotage lies in the nervous system. People often underestimate how deeply their body is involved in psychological patterns. If you grew up in chaos, your nervous system may become dysregulated when life becomes calm. If you grew up surrounded by criticism, your body may react with stress when you receive kindness. If you grew up in instability, stability may feel threatening. The nervous system remembers emotional environments, and it reacts when something feels unfamiliar, even if the unfamiliar is healthier. This is why people sometimes feel anxious in peaceful relationships, suspicious when treated with respect, or overwhelmed when things go well. The body is waiting for a familiar form of danger, so it unconsciously tries to recreate it. Self-sabotage often masks itself as self-protection. When you avoid opportunities, the mind says you're being sensible. When you pull away from good people, the mind says you're protecting your heart. When you procrastinate, the mind says you're preserving your energy. When you downplay your abilities, the mind says you're being realistic. But all these internal narratives are just disguises for fear. Fear is the core of self-sabotage. Fear of failing, fear of succeeding, fear of being seen, fear of being judged, fear of changing, fear of repeating the past, fear of losing control, fear of being vulnerable. The mind is incredibly creative at inventing rational explanations for irrational fears, and this creativity makes self-sabotage feel logical when it is anything but. Breaking free from self-sabotage requires awareness, but awareness alone is not enough. You cannot simply tell yourself to stop sabotaging and expect the patterns to disappear. The subconscious mind needs new emotional experiences to replace old ones. It needs repeated evidence that progress is safe, that success is survivable, that love is not dangerous, that being seen does not lead to rejection, and that change is not a threat. This process is not instant. It requires patience, because you are not just building new habits, you are rewiring emotional and neurological pathways that were formed over many years. Each small step you take in the direction of growth reinforces the belief that you are capable of handling what you once feared. The first step to overcoming self-sabotage is understanding your patterns. You must look at the moments when you pull back, the excuses you make, the situations that trigger resistance, and the emotions that surface when you move towards something you want. These moments are not failures, they are clues. They reveal where your fears live, where your wounds are unhealed, and where your identity feels threatened. The goal is not to eliminate fear, but to recognize it. When you can look at fear without obeying it, it begins to lose its power. The second step is learning to tolerate discomfort. Growth requires stepping into the unfamiliar, and discomfort is a natural part of that process. Instead of avoiding discomfort, learn to sit with it. Learn to breathe through it. Learn to interpret it not as danger, but as expansion. Your nervous system needs time to adjust to new emotional environments, and each moment of discomfort is evidence that you are expanding beyond old patterns. The moment you stop trying to escape discomfort is the moment you begin to weaken self-sabotage. The third step is to build a healthier self. You cannot act like a confident person if you see yourself as inadequate. You cannot act like a disciplined person if you believe you are lazy. You cannot act like a successful person if you believe you are destined to fail. Your actions will always return to the level of your self-image. So the work involves rewriting the internal story you tell yourself, not by repeating empty affirmations, but by proving to yourself that you are capable through consistent small actions. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your new identity. Each time you take action despite fear, you reshape the way you see yourself. Identity is not built through dreaming it. is built through doing. Finally, you must learn to give yourself what you never received. If you grew up without encouragement, you must learn to encourage yourself. If you grew up without stability, you must create stability for yourself. If you grew up without emotional safety, you must build emotional safety within yourself. Self-sabotage thrives in the absence of self-support. When you become the person who supports your own growth, your mind no longer needs to sabotage your progress to feel safe. You do not sabotage yourself because you are incapable. You sabotage yourself because a part of you is still trying to survive the past. But you are no longer that child, no longer in that environment, no longer powerless, no longer trapped. The life you want is not impossible, it is unfamiliar. And unfamiliarity is not a sign to pull back. It is a sign to move forward with awareness, persistence, and compassion for the version of you that learned to fear what you now desire. If you can learn to sit with discomfort, challenge your internal narratives, and build a new identity through consistent small steps, you can break the cycle. You can grow into the person you've always been capable of becoming. And when you do, you will look back and realize that self-sabotage was never the enemy. It was simply a misguided protector waiting for you to take control. And if this message resonated with you, remember, your mind can be your greatest obstacle, but it can also become your greatest allowance. You learn how to decode it. If you want to understand your mind deeper, uncover your hidden patterns, and continue this journey of self-discovery, don't forget to subscribe to MindDecode HQ and join a community built around growth, awareness, and transformation.